At my graduation celebration, my brother suddenly clutched his chest in pain just as I was sharing my acceptance letter. So I played the recording I had made 30 minutes earlier, detailing his predictable performance. Before we dive in, remember to hit that like button and subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. What's the most important truth you wish you'd discovered sooner? Share your perspective. Thanks for watching. Let me start from the very beginning. My younger brother Marcus was born 6 weeks early, arrived pale as winter snow, and spent his first 4 years connected to monitors and medical equipment at Boston Children's Hospital. Understandably, our parents became extremely overprotective. They maintained constant vigils by his bedside, purchased every toy that caught his interest, and insisted I cancel plans with friends to watch over him. Initially, I believed this was appropriate. He was my medically fragile younger brother, after all. But then Marcus grew stronger and healthier. He no longer required breathing assistance or feeding support and could function completely independently. However, by this stage, he had discovered that appearing unwell brought him anything he desired, whether material rewards or simply sympathy and focus. It began with his migraines conveniently surfacing whenever he faced geometry assignments. Mom and Dad would sweep away the textbooks, substituting them with Haagen-Dazs cookies and cream and streaming privileges. By the time Marcus reached 12 and I turned 17, he had mastered his performance, and it genuinely frustrated me because his episodes only emerged during my triumphant occasions. When I earned captain of the debate team at Roosevelt High, he developed unexplained back spasms that forced my parents to abandon my first competition early. When I received my MIT acceptance, he collapsed during our celebration meal at Cheesecake Factory, and we spent the evening in the emergency room at Massachusetts General, where physicians discovered absolutely nothing concerning. The most infuriating aspect was his subtle grin when our parents looked away. He even rehearsed his distressed expressions in the bathroom mirror. I attempted to demonstrate this to my parents once, but Marcus had already convinced them I resented the attention his medical needs required. My girlfriend Sarah lasted 6 months before Marcus manipulated the situation. He fabricated false screenshots of messages where I allegedly called him a pretender and wished he would simply vanish forever. The breakup occurred at Dunkin' Donuts on Commonwealth Avenue. Sarah slid her Samsung across the table, displaying the fabricated evidence Marcus had assembled. She explained she couldn't date someone who treated their sick brother so heartlessly. Marcus texted me a photo wearing the Red Sox jersey Sarah had given me for Valentine's Day. That became my final straw. For 4 years, I had observed him steal everything meaningful to me, so I began monitoring him carefully, more attentively than anyone previously had. And I discovered a routine. Every single instance Marcus experienced pain, he invariably clutched his left side. Whether affecting his head, his stomach, his back, always the left side. He consistently called specifically for Dad first, never Mom, always rated his discomfort between 7 and 9 on the medical scale. And he always recovered in precisely 90 minutes to 2 hours, which perfectly timed to destroy whatever I had scheduled. Once I identified this routine, I formulated my strategy. And last Saturday at our weekly family brunch, it unfolded more successfully than I ever imagined possible. We were having our regular gathering with all the grandparents, aunts, and cousins at Nana Rose's house in Cambridge. About 18 people surrounded her antique mahogany dining table that had belonged to our family for decades. 30 minutes before the meal, I excused myself to the upstairs study where I recorded a video on my phone. In that recording, I explained that I was about to make a false announcement regarding receiving a scholarship for graduate school at Harvard. I predicted precisely how Marcus would respond. He would wait for the congratulations to conclude, then grasp his left side and call for Dad. He would rate his pain as 7, 8, or 9. He would need to rest immediately, and he would request Dad to drive him to the hospital if the pain didn't subside within 30 minutes. At brunch, I stood up and tapped my coffee mug with a spoon, capturing everyone's attention. The conversations quieted as 18 pairs of eyes focused on me. Then I announced that I had just received a full scholarship for my master's program in computer science at Harvard. Everyone burst into applause and congratulations. Grandpa Joe patted my shoulder. My cousins Emma and Rachel embraced me tightly, and Dad had genuine tears of pride glistening in his eyes. The sound of clapping resonated through Nana's dining room, mixed with congratulations and jokes about how I could finally afford graduate school without massive debt. Grandpa Joe made a comment about me becoming the family academic, while Nana was already discussing out loud how proud great-grandpa would have been. I maintained the smile fixed on my face, waving and thanking everyone, but my attention was laser-focused on Marcus. He was seated at the opposite end of the extended table between my cousin Tyler and Aunt Jennifer, mindlessly moving around the scrambled eggs on his plate. For just an instant, he almost appeared genuinely pleased for me. Almost, but I understood him too thoroughly. I witnessed the precise moment something transformed in his demeanor. It was subtle, as it always was. A slight tightening around his eyes, a minor stiffening of his posture. He glanced around the table, observing how all attention centered on me, how people were authentically excited about my achievement, how I was absolutely radiant. And then it commenced. First, Marcus stopped eating. He allowed his fork to fall onto his plate with a gentle clink that only a few people nearby detected. Aunt Jennifer asked if he was all right, but Marcus simply nodded with that forced smile, one of those he employed when he wanted to appear courageous despite overwhelming discomfort. I continued discussing with Grandpa Joe about the details of my scholarship, lying effortlessly about research I hadn't done and opportunities one didn't have. But part of me was counting down, 3, 2, 1. Like clockwork, he brought his hand to the left side of his chest. The first groan was nearly inaudible, a quiet sigh that blended with the noise of conversations. But Marcus knew exactly how to project his voice, so it appeared as though he was attempting to conceal something when really he wanted everyone to notice. My cousin Tyler, who was sitting beside him, stopped mid-sentence in his story about his new internship at the law firm. "Marcus, everything okay over there?" he asked, leaning toward him with concern. "It's nothing," he murmured, but loud enough for at least half the table to hear. His voice carried that specific tone, brave, but with a hint of vulnerability that always melted people's hearts. "Just some discomfort," he added quietly. And so began the performance I had witnessed countless times before. Aunt Jennifer immediately turned completely toward Marcus, forgetting her conversation with Uncle Pete about the Patriots' playoff chances. "What kind of discomfort, sweetie? What does it hurt?" Marcus curved slightly in his chair. A flawless performance calculated to the millimeter. Not too dramatic because that would appear fake. Just enough to demonstrate real distress. "It's here on the left side," he said, pressing his hand against his body. It appeared suddenly. I observed the transformation happen in real time. Conversations began to decrease in volume. Glances gradually shifted toward Marcus. My scholarship, which moments ago was the center of attention, began to fade into the background, replaced by the automatic family concern that always surrounded my brother. Dad, who had been beside me laughing at Uncle Michael's story about his disastrous golf game, suddenly stopped mid-laugh. That expression I knew so well began to overtake his face. The paternal panic that Marcus knew how to trigger with surgical precision. "Marcus, what happened, son?" Dad was already halfway up from his chair, his napkin dropping to the hardwood floor. Marcus lifted his eyes, always to Dad first, never to Mom. I had noticed this pattern years ago. "Dad, it's hurting quite a bit," he whispered, his voice trembling just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. Enough to sound genuine, but not so much that it seemed theatrical. Mom, as always, went into problem-solving mode. "What kind of pain? Cramping, burning, sharp?" "It's a dull ache," Marcus answered, closing his eyes as if concentrating to describe it accurately. "But really intense, and it's getting worse." Nana Rose crossed herself. Grandpa Joe frowned with worry. My cousin Emma was already asking if anyone had Tylenol in their bag. The attention of the entire room had completely shifted from me to Marcus, like water spiraling down a drain. I kept smiling, kept participating in the speculation about what could be causing Marcus's pain. But inside, I was fascinated watching the mechanism work. It was like watching a conductor directing an orchestra. Each groan, each expression of pain, each word chosen to elicit exactly the desired reaction. On a scale of 1 to 10, Dad asked, already grabbing the Toyota keys from the sideboard near the table. This question had become a sacred ritual in our family over the years. Marcus paused for a moment, as if he were genuinely evaluating the intensity of the pain. Another brilliant touch. If he answered immediately, it might seem rehearsed. It's a 7, he said finally, his voice coming out weaker. Maybe an 8. Of course it was. It was never less than 7, never a 10. That would be too dramatic, too obvious. Always between 7 and 8, enough to be concerning, but not so much that it would raise suspicions. I watched the entire family dynamic reorganize around Marcus's pain. Aunt Jennifer began telling everyone about when she had gallbladder issues. Nana murmured about how the poor boy had suffered so much since he was little. My cousin Tyler was already suggesting maybe it was his heart. My scholarship had become a distant memory in less than 4 minutes. Marcus curved a little more, bringing his second hand to support the first. Dad, I think I need to lie down, he whispered, but loud enough for everyone to hear. And then he did that thing that always made me want to scream. He looked directly at me for just a second when he was sure no one else was looking, and he smiled. A small smile, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The smile of someone who had just scored the winning goal. Maybe we should take him to Brigham and Women's, Dad said, already standing up completely. Jennifer, can you drive? I'm too nervous. It was at that moment that something snapped inside me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder, more calculated. Everyone stood up, preparing to transform what should have been my moment of celebration into another rush to the emergency room. I stood up too, but instead of grabbing my purse, I grabbed my phone. Wait, I said, my voice coming out calmer than I felt. Before we go running to the hospital, there's something you all need to see. Marcus looked at me, and for the first time, I detected something different in his expression, a hint of suspicion, maybe even fear. But he was too committed to the performance to stop now. Alex, this isn't the time for this, he said, his voice still weak and suffering. I'm in a lot of pain. I know exactly how much pain you're feeling, I replied, unlocking my phone. And I know exactly when it's going to pass. Aunt Jennifer frowned. Alex, what do you mean by that? I held the phone in the air, my finger hovering over the play button. I recorded a video 30 minutes ago. You're all going to want to watch this. Marcus went completely still. His hand was still pressed to his left side. His expression still showed pain, but something had changed. It was as if he realized the ground was moving under his feet, but didn't know exactly why. What video? Dad asked, still torn between concern for Marcus and curiosity about what I was doing. I looked directly at Marcus, seeing the exact moment he understood that something was terribly wrong. His eyes widened slightly, but he couldn't abandon the act now. Not in front of the whole family. A video that's unexplained a lot, I said and pressed play. My voice came out clear and firm from the phone speaker. It's 10:10 a.m. on Saturday. In 30 minutes, I'm going to make a false announcement about a scholarship at Harvard during family brunch. When I do this, Marcus will wait for the applause to finish. Then, he'll grab the left side of his body and call for Dad. He'll rate the pain as 7 or 8. He'll ask to lie down, and if he follows his pattern, he'll suggest going to the hospital in exactly 25 minutes. The silence in the room was so dense, I could hear the tick-tock of Nana's antique clock. All eyes turned to Marcus, who had become completely frozen, his hand still glued to his left side, as if it had been superglued there. He always holds the left side. My recorded voice continued mercilessly. No matter what type of pain it is, head, chest, stomach, always the left side. Always calls specifically for Dad first. And he always recovers in 90 minutes to 2 hours. Just enough time to ruin any important moment of mine. Nana Rose was the first to find her voice. Marcus, is this true? Marcus tried to recover, but I could see the panic growing in his eyes. I don't know what Alex is talking about, he stammered, trying to return to the suffering tone. I'm really in pain. Don't you believe me? I'm not done yet, I said, pausing the first video. That was just the beginning. I navigated to the next folder on my phone, a collection I had been meticulously compiling over the past few months. Do you want to see what really happened at my high school graduation? Alex, stop this, Marcus whispered. But his voice had lost all that theatrical fragility. Now it sounded sharp, almost threatening. I played the next video. It was security camera footage from Roosevelt High that I'd obtained through my friend Kevin, who worked in the IT department. The grainy image showed Marcus in the side corridor near the trophy cases 5 minutes before the ceremony began. He was completely alone, checking his phone. Then suddenly, he put the phone away, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and started practicing. There, alone in that corridor, My brother was rehearsing expressions of pain. He grimaced, brought his hand to his chest, made different faces using the reflection in the glass display case. He was literally rehearsing which expression would be most convincing. "Dear God," Aunt Jennifer murmured, her hand flying to cover her mouth. "Wait, there's more," I said, moving to the next file. "Remember when Sarah broke up with me? When she said I was cruel to my sick brother?" Marcus went pale. "Alex, don't." These are the original messages he sent to Sarah, pretending to be me. I showed the screenshots I had managed to recover from his phone's cloud backup. Another favor from my tech-savvy friend Kevin. Look at the dates and times. He waited for me to leave the house to use my laptop and create fake social media accounts. The messages were vicious, saying horrible things about Marcus that I would never think, let alone write. But they were written in my style, with slang I used, details that only someone who knew me intimately would include. Dad took my phone with trembling hands, reading message by message. His expression grew darker with each line. "He even researched your work schedule," I continued, "to know when I wouldn't be home. He created a fake Twitter profile with my photo, added Sarah as a friend, and started sending these messages pretending to be me. When she confronted me about them, he acted shocked and said I must have let someone use my computer. "Marcus," Mom said, her voice coming out as a broken whisper. "This can't be true." "But it is," I said, feeling a dark satisfaction watching Marcus's house of cards begin to crumble. "And there's more, much more." I moved to the next file, an audio recording I had secretly made the previous month using a voice recorder app. This is Marcus on the phone with his friend Jake last week. Marcus's voice came out clear from the phone. "It's really easy, Jake. You just need to know the right buttons to push. Dad gets desperate if I say it's chest pain on the left side. But if I say it's stomach pain, he takes longer to react. And it always works better when Alex is having a good day. Then everyone feels sorry for me and gets annoyed with her for being insensitive." Jake laughed in the recording. "You're terrible, Marcus, but your sister really is kind of arrogant anyway. She thinks she's better than everyone." Marcus continued. "She was always the favorite, always had everything handed to her. At least when I faked being sick, I managed to get them to pay attention to me too. And it's fun watching her get frustrated." The silence that followed was deadly. Marcus was white as a sheet, trembling. And this time, the trembling was completely real. "Marcus," Nana Rose said, her voice loaded with disappointment that cut through the air like a knife. "How could you?" "There's more," I said relentlessly. "Do you want to see the video of when he fainted at my 18th birthday party?" This time, Marcus tried to get up, probably to run away, but Uncle Pete gently but firmly held him by the shoulders. "Stay there, Marcus. I think you need to hear this." The video showed Marcus in our backyard, hidden behind the garden shed 10 minutes before making his big dramatic entrance. He was testing different ways to feign on the grass, checking which angle would be most convincing and least dangerous. He practiced for 12 minutes, falling sideways, falling forward, falling backward. He chose the side fall because the grass was softer there. My cousin Tyler made a sound that was half shocked laughter, half groan of disbelief. "Marcus, this is sick." "It's not sick," I said finally, putting the phone away. "It's calculated, systematic." He turned manipulation into an art form. Marcus finally exploded. Okay, fine. Do you want the truth? I faked it. I faked it sometimes. Yes, but you don't understand. The tears started rolling, but now they were different. Tears of anger, of frustration, of someone caught red-handed. "Do you think it's easy being perfect, Alex's brother? Alex the genius. Alex the popular one. Alex who never does anything wrong? Do you know what it's like to grow up in her shadow? So you decided to sabotage me?" I replied coldly. "Destroy my relationships. Ruin my important moments. Make everyone think I'm a cruel and insensitive sister. Because you had everything." Marcus screamed, all pretense of being sick completely abandoned. "You always had everything. And me? I was just the brother who almost died as a baby. The only way anyone paid attention to me was when I was sick." "But you weren't sick," Dad said, his voice low but loaded with deep disappointment. "You were lying for years and sabotaging your sister's life in the process. And manipulating us," Mom added, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, how could you be so cruel?" "Cruel?" Marcus laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Do you want to know what's cruel? Growing up watching your sister get congratulated for breathing while you need to almost die for someone to notice you. You were never almost dying. I exploded. At least not in the last 8 years. You were acting, manipulating, lying because it worked. Because it was the only thing that worked, he screamed back. The room fell into stunned silence. One by one, family members began to stand up and distance themselves from Marcus. Uncle Pete shook his head in disgust. Aunt Jennifer gathered her purse with trembling hands. Even Nana Rose, who had always been Marcus's biggest defender, sat frozen in her chair, staring at her youngest grandson as if seeing a stranger. 12 years, Mom whispered. 12 years of believing, worrying, canceling plans, losing sleep. And I lost 12 years of my life too, I added. 12 years being treated as the cruel and insensitive sister. 12 years watching my important moments get destroyed. 12 years being blamed for not having enough patience with a sick brother. Marcus raised his face, tears making tracks through his makeup. Alex, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Now you're sorry? I said, now that you've been caught. I looked around the table at my family, seeing the mix of shock, disappointment, and betrayal in their faces. You all know now. You all know what kind of person he really is. You know what he did to me, to this family for years. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. The sound of Marcus's real crying, not performed, but genuine anguish, followed me. Where are you going? Dad asked, tears streaming down his face. Away from here, I replied. Away from this toxic dynamic, and especially away from him. I pointed at Marcus without even looking in his direction. I'm going where I should have gone years ago. I'm going to build a life where people like him can't reach me. The door slammed behind me, but not before I heard Marcus start screaming. Not from fake pain this time, but from real agony. The agony of finally having to face who he really was. And for the first time in years, the sound of his pain didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel free. Sometimes the truth hurts more than any lie ever could. But sometimes that pain is exactly what's needed to finally heal.